Mexico makes more money from what illegal aliens in this country send back to Mexico than they do in tourism. I had the Mexican Minister of Tourism on earlier before I came on to guest host Mark Levin's show, Michael Berry in Houston here, and we were going through their economy. Number one source of revenue in Mexico is the oil company. Number two is receipts from Mexicans living here, a good portion of which is illegal aliens. And number three is tourism. And you wonder why they come here and lecture the state of Arizona about catching illegal aliens and sending them back. You wonder why they have the audacity to come and speak on the floor of the House and lecture us about illegal aliens. Illegal aliens are like agents of the Mexican government. They are revenue producers. They're like salesmen, and the product is Mexico. They're here making money legally and illegally, or in legal industries and illegal industries, even when they're illegal, sending it back to Mexico. And that's what Mexico is surviving off of. Now, stop and think about that. And the Democrat Party gave a standing ovation to Pepe Felipe Calderon when he stood on the floor of the House of Congress and lectured the people of Arizona. Americans turned against Americans in favor of the president of a foreign country as he lectured them on their law, which, by the way, their law only allows them or enables them to enforce the federal law. You know how we end up in this problem? Because too few people are willing to fight. Nobody wants to offend. Nobody wants to upset. Nobody wants to be that guy. It's time people start being that guy. Wall Street Journal reports deficit for fiscal 2007 for the year was $161 billion. For the year, the deficit was $161 billion. And now, for the month, $220 billion. We're now running monthly deficits higher than the annual deficits from just a few years ago. You ever seen that guy at the club or at the restaurant with the gold cufflinks and the monogram shirt, pulling up in the Ferrari, girls young enough to be his daughter hanging all over him, waving around his money and talking big? He usually has too much cologne on. There's a relationship. He's got his hair slicked back, little Charlie Sheen wannabe. He's talking big. And then you find out that he's running a Ponzi scheme, promoting deals that never happen. He's a total scam artist. He's been running his finances that way because of the perception that he was Mr. Hot Shot. That's what the United States is under Barack Hussein Obama. Spending money we don't have that we borrow from someone else, talking about how big our hearts are, and it will never be enough money. You have to understand, as government has grown, liberals have clamored for more. It will never be enough. Jessie Jackson Junior, as if his father hasn't contributed enough to our country, a true public servant. The fruit doesn't fall very far from the tree. He handed us his firstborn, the Honorable Jessie Jackson Jr.
We need to add to the Constitution the right to a family to have a decent home. What would that do for home construction in this nation? What would that do for millions of unemployed people? He says we need to add to the Constitution the right to medical care. How many doctors would such a right create? He says we need to add to the Constitution of the United States the right to a decent education for every American. How many schools would such a right build from Maine to California? How many people would be put to work building roofs and designing classrooms and providing every student with an iPod and a laptop? How many ghettos and barrios will actually be touched by such an amendment? In fact, very little that we pass in the Congress of the United States even touches the long-term unemployed. Only thing that touches them that this Congress has access to that can actually change their station in life is the Constitution of the United States.
Oh, my goodness. There comes a point in the lifespan of any republic where the number of stupid people so outnumbers the number of critical thinking people. You've heard it. You've heard the terms by political scientists over the year, where people figure out they can vote themselves a raise, and everyone gets a raise and nobody's left to pay for it. There comes a point in the life of a republic where even the stupid people get a representative. And when enough stupid people are gerrymandered into districts, and when their representatives scream loudly enough, and when the media assists them, and the schools back them, and the universities and public schools are birthing enough students with enough guilt, and those who know better refuse to speak out, you might just be on the verge of collapse. It's that bad. I wish he spoke like his daddy, because that would be more fun, don't you think? I personally, frankly, wish Jessie Jackson could be sent to Congress, or as a senator, give him a little more stature, and just let him talk all the time. I'd listen to that man talk all the time. I mean, you could have him there, and I also think if Jessie Jackson Junior is speaking, if he were in Chicago, if some of Barack Obama's supporters from the South Side, the crackheads that he used to organize at Acorn, if they were there, they wouldn't let him give such an impassioned speech without giving him a huh. They always have, the community organizers, they bring with them. They bring a whole crew of huh men. So when they make a good point, you know it's like a laugh track, but it's a huh track. That's what Jessie Jackson Jr. needed here. He needs to speak like his daddy, and he needs a whole crew of huh men.
We need to add to the Constitution the right to a family to have a decent home.
Huh?
What would that do for home construction?
Yes.
In this nation?
Yes.
What would that do for millions of unemployed people?
Yes. If unemployed people just had a home. Wouldn't that, that's it. If unemployed, but we just bought everybody a home. Oh, I think his daddy could tell it better than that. I miss Jesse. Can you imagine? We could have him speak every day. If Jessie Jackson Senior could just be the face of the Democratic Party, if every day they would ask his opinion on things. He's kind of grown a little even crazier than usual of late. But if they could just every day, if Democrats, before they voted, they could say, all right, let's just take a look at the face of the Democratic Party. I want you to understand what you are empowering. I want you to understand who you are voting for. Big Labor, Al Gore, the NAACP, and LULAC. There you go. That is your party. Those coalitions make up the legs to your platform. You might be voting for it, but there is no place for you in this party because those groups have so squeezed you out. You've got a guy calling for the implementation of entitlements into a constitution. Now, can you imagine Madison and Jefferson hearing that speech? Men who had studied governments back to the ancient Greeks, men who had studied the forms of government, Locke and Hobbes and the various theories of the institution of government, the Hobbesian and Lockean treatises of government. And then you've got an absolute clown standing up and declaring that what the Constitution should entitle is every kid to have an iPod. That's what we've come to in America today. But we don't actually speak out against it. We just tisk and look away. That's what makes it on the evening news. That's what's teaching in our schools. That's what's substituting for good sense in this country. And people who know better don't want to fight it because you might be called a name, and that would hurt your feelings. Folks, we're coming to the point. Remember the Alamo, or fight for your country. Whatever it is that inspires you, change is going to have to come from the bottom up. At every point where you see it, we are going to have to fight back against these tendencies because the cancer that infects our country didn't happen overnight. The silent majority is the source of our problems, not the liberals. If the majority wasn't silent, we wouldn't be dealing with it. Michael Berry in for Mark Levin. More coming up. So Jessie Jackson says everybody needs something. Jessie Jackson Jr. Everybody needs something to make them happy. Give them an iPod and a computer. They ought to. Everybody out there needs at least the stuff everybody in prison gets, right? Or maybe we're imprisoning these young men and women with the cancerous language of the left, this sense of entitlement, this anger at the man, this hatred of being rich. You know, we used to in this country inspire people to want to become rich. Now we've taught them to hate the rich because there's something in it for the left. 877-381-3811. I'm Michael Berry in for Mark Levin. You figured that out already. Willie in Pennsylvania, listening on XM Radio. Glad to have you.
Yeah, thanks for taking the call. I got to know about a fellow, Frank Woodruff Buckles. He was the oldest living World War I vet. Do you know much about him?
I just know he's the guy that just passed.
Yes, 27th of February.
Right. I just know what I read on that day.
Well, when there's a story that AOL had out about his daughter is trying to get him to be laid in state at the Rotunda. And our wonderful Congress has rejected her request. And I was just wondering if it was something that we felt was worth doing, because after all, he is the last living World War I vet, the Doughboys. And when he found out that he was the last man alive, he wore that as a crown of honor. And I've actually got a personalized autographed picture from him, because he wanted to recognize all the men and women that have served our country. And he's going to be laid to rest the 15th of March, I believe it is, in Arlington. And just thought I'd get that out on the air. And
well, I appreciate your call, Willie. Here's the deal. This president does not respect our veterans. Does not. Now, when you say that, I was talking about Salvatore Giunta, and he was a recipient of the Medal of Honor. And I spoke for a while. You can look up my name and Salvatore Giunta. There's a YouTube clip. I talked about it for about 5 minutes. I had watched that day Salvatore Giunta receiving the Medal of Honor, and I had watched President Obama and his behavior. And I watched where they put the other men, the other Marines that were in his unit, which was several rows back, and most of his family was several rows back. And it offended me to the core what this man had done. Barack Hussein Obama won fair and square the right to be president. He gets to make whatever policies he wants within the context and constraints of the Constitution, and to the extent necessary with the advice and consent of the Senate for appointments, and with the funding that has to be approved by the United States Congress. He won that right. He earned it. What I can't tolerate is the fact that he can use his position as President of the United States to show such a lack of respect for our men and women in uniform. And he's done it over and over and over again. And I'm not going to argue with ABC, NBC, CBS, MSNBC, CNN, or any of the others. You see, they have a very powerful and persuasive way of pitching Barack Obama. They can't defend him on the merits. So what they do instead is they say, yeah, those people on the right say that he doesn't respect the military. They sort of roll their eyes, and it creates a doubt, because surely the president couldn't show such a lack of respect. Yeah, they say the president wants to take away this or that. They say the president, he wants to take over your health care. They say the president wants to institute death penalties. And they sort of roll their eyes, and they leave it hanging. And a lot of Americans don't want to believe that someone could be president and have the views that he does. Listen to what the man says. Look at what he's written. Listen to the words that his pastor preached for 20 years. He told us he sat down front. Why did Oprah Winfrey need to leave that church? Because those white suburban women that have made her so wealthy, if they found out what she was listening to, may not like that. Barack Obama, to quote a football coach, is who we thought he was.